Ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Today, this is a live broadcast. Today is October 24th, 2014. It's Friday. It's actually a follow-up Friday, if you will. As I said, I'm Doug Hagmann. In studio with me is my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, we've got a good show planned for you this evening, beginning with multiple headlines, of course, concerning the Ebola case in New York, the first confirmed case, or so they say, in New York. Obviously, the headlines, if you just, pick a news site for crying out loud. Ebola reaches the concrete jungle. The doctor rode the subway hours before testing positive, had cleared enhanced airport screening. That should tell you volumes. And, of course, there's a race on to decontaminate everywhere where this guy went. Of course, we're being told not to fear. Don't fear. It's really, you can't really catch Ebola. And, of course, let me remind everyone, I do, and we do, I think Joe and I are pretty solid on this together, we believe what Steve Quayle has researched and has found out through his sources as well as other experts in the field, that this Ebola is not Ebola Zaire, as it was known to be, or the Congo, right? Yeah, it's some sort of mutation, and of course, this is being done for a couple of reasons. Incompetence is one thing, but when you've got situations that defy logic to the extent that the movements of healthcare professionals and also the leaving open the borders and not restricting flights, doing everything to keep Ebola or to invite Ebola in as opposed to keeping it out, of course, that defies logic. So that's a big story, and of course the ultimate goal there, folks, is the destruction of the United States. This is going to have a tremendous impact on the economy, on commerce, and on our freedom, our civil liberties.
You said something yesterday about the reaction that the stock market would have with the news that there is a confirmed Ebola case in New York. I have not seen the stock market today and what it has, whether it went up or down. Was there any kind of sharp decrease in the beginning, or was there any market change from that response?
Yeah, that's a great question, and any listener out there who has that information, I don't know exactly what happened. I've been deep in research, investigation, conducting interviews all day, actually from 6 o'clock this morning right through showtime. So I don't know precisely what happened with the stock market. That's one area that I can't. I really can't tell you, but
it just jumped on Zero Hedge. I'll find out.
Okay, all right. Well, and by the way, welcome to the studio tonight. I'm glad you can make it, Joe. You were coming rushing in like those old Samsonite commercials in the airport.
Yeah.
At any rate, we've got a marvelous, informative show planned for you folks tonight. I just want to say this as well, folks. Many of you know Kim in our as a listener, and Kim's mom. God bless them both. They're great, great, great people. Just the best of people. Let's say a prayer for Kim's mom, please, if you will. Kim asked this. Could you all please pray for her mom? She just came from the doctors, and the doctor believes that she has lumbar spinal stenosis. And I've got to tell you, I'll just tell you this. I've got spinal stenosis in two areas of my spine, and with compression of the spinal cord in one area, slight compression of the spinal cord in one area, not to the extent of paralysis, of course, but
it's not that far off. After working with you, we travel out of town. We sleep in hotel rooms. I've never witnessed you have a normal night's sleep. You sleep for a block of time, whether it's 2 to 4 hours, 4 hours being the max, and that's it. And you do it. You sleep whenever you get so tired that you have to fall asleep, and it's only a few times a day. And at least that's the way it used to be. I don't know if anything's changed. And the bed is the last place you'll find him sleeping. You'll find him on the floor, the couch, leaning up against the wall, sitting in the car in the driveway. You never know.
Well, that's the exciting part of it, folks. Really, yeah. But please, folks, please say a prayer for Kim's mom. It is a very painful condition, and certainly one that can cause you a lot of grief. And I know Steve Quayle even has something similar, and I won't get too far into that, but I mean, he's got some neck problems.
On the issue of prayer, I forgot to do this last week, but I spoke with a listener and a friend of the show, and her name's Debbie, last initial F. If you could keep her and her family in your prayers also. She is battling a series of health complications that have changed the way that she is able to live. She's on oxygen now. She has a hard time, with mobility and energy. And she asked me to put out a call for prayers because she knows how powerful the prayers are, and she understands and knows the audience, and that they are prayer warriors, and she has hope and faith that through their prayers that she will be not healed, but she will be brought to the level that she can function as she needs to for the Lord in these days. That's Debbie F.
All right, and we need to keep everyone in prayer, folks. I truly believe that all the listeners, we need to keep each other in prayer, lifted up, because we are fighting a spiritual battle, and it's such that it is manifesting itself. The battle that we're seeing take place right now. If you haven't noticed, otherwise rational people, or at least people perceived to be rational, appear to have gone off the deep end in many cases. And people that may have been close to you, and folks, I'm thinking perhaps that this may be happening to you if you've got someone close to you. Maybe you've perceived or noticed some sort of change where they're going to come after, or they're coming after you, or attempting to marginalize, discredit you in many different ways and forms, and call you nuts for believing in conspiracy theories. Well, what we're engaged in, and it's not conspiracy theory; it's conspiracy analysis. And so God said it was. I mean, these are truly the end of days. And Joe, I mean, you know how bad things will get.
And I want to add to something you brought up in that you talked about watch for people to act violently, to act hostile, and you were mentioning the type of people who maybe are against Christians or against the truth. But watch the behavior of people around you, no matter who they are. And there is something happening with, as it's been happening, this separation, this people moving either closer to the spiritual side, moving closer to the Lord, or moving away. And in the people who are moving away, they seem to be going a little bit crazy, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean they are not acting rational. They are having fits or bouts of unwarranted or violence or anger, frustration, stupidity. It's very sad to see people act in a way that is completely contrary to the way you know them to be, and not only that, for no reason that you could point out.
Exactly. And I think I got rid of that frog that was in my throat. Maybe not. I was called here last week about a situation in a Christian church where there was a situation that involved, maybe a half a dozen people. But because of the response, the situation, the response, the emotional response, and the varying types of activities that were taking place, this had the potential to really split this church and bring down this church in a big way. I can't get into the details except to say I've never, as an investigator, I've never seen anything quite like what I saw this past week in looking at the various aspects of what was going on within this Christian church, and looking, they asked me to investigate a couple of things, and just to help them out, to assist them, knowing my position on Christianity, and of course, I'm a Christian investigator. Not too many investigators can identify with that. So, having said all of that, we are entering into, I believe, a very dangerous time. And I would also caution everyone, and this is something that, Steve Quayle has his critics, we've got our critics. If you don't have critics or people shooting at you, then I don't think you're doing your job, at least if you're a public figure or a quasi-public figure. I would call myself a public figure. I mean, Facebook kind of prompted me to change from a friend or to a public figure based on whatever criteria that they had. So whatever that means, I'm not really big on Facebook except to post links to articles and shows and things like that. But having said that, the attacks against the Watchmen are ramping up to such an extent that there's this unbridled viciousness taking place, and I've seen this with against Rick Wiles, I've seen this against Steve, against Pastor Langford, against Greg Jackson, against anyone who dares to come out and stand for the truth or talk about anything that is even remotely controversial or remotely about anything. But you see, I feel that there's, as things, and I was talking to Steve about this, as things progress, as time progresses, I really believe that people that are making these attacks, whether they're part of the government or they're separated just by a couple of degrees from the government or from the administration or this regime or the supporters thereof, or whether they have agendas, homosexual agenda, abortion, pro-abortion, eugenics. I mean, I do believe that we will see them self-destruct, and I think it. So if you are experiencing this personally, I think we need to really prepare for that. And the only way you can really prepare for that is to be aware that this is going to increase as time moves forward. And you just have to be prayed up. I mean, I don't, and you know what? You also, I really believe this too. For a practical point of, as a matter of practical advice, you just can't respond or engage in people who are trying to, mess with your integrity or your character or. And I go back to the critics of Steve Quayle and how he has to handle these every day, and they're ramping up. So the best way to handle it, even if it's close to you, I think is just pray and understand that this is a natural artifact, I believe, of the last at the end of days, that it's satanic in nature, and that the people who are attempting to do this, or agencies or whatever, will be exposed for their intent. And the reason I spent some time on this, Joe, is just because I've been hearing from different people, different parts of the country, and I've never seen the level of emotion associated with their particular situations. In other words, boy, my wife is really, she's ready to divorce me, for example, because of, well, listening to Alex Jones, or listening to this show, or listening to the shows with Pastor Langford and Steve Quayle, or whatever.
We talked about, for anybody who started listening to us recently in the last few weeks, you had a married couple, from the same email account.
Yeah.
And if you want to tell the story or get into it more than I will, but they were sending my father, emails. One, the wife saying, "I love listening to your show, but my husband can't stand it, and we fight. I can't listen to it while he's here," something along these lines. And then another email would come in from the same account, and it would be from the husband. "You're the reason that me and my wife are going to get a divorce, because she will not stop listening to you," or "she is crazy and it's your fault," something along those lines.
Exactly. Yeah, you did it well. And in the end result of this was a final email from the husband saying that it's over, and in terms of their marriage, and it was a sad thing. And I was able to verify through other means that it was legitimate. What would happen is the wife would send an email and then go off to work, and the husband would come home from work and use the same email account to send an email, and that's how it volleyed back and forth. And you might think, wow, is that ever ridiculous? It sounds almost contrived. It sounds almost fake, because why not use your own email account? Or but having said that, why not? And I was able to get in touch with the woman behind the victim, I'll say here, who was accused of being a conspiracy kook, to be exact. And I actually spoke with her on the phone, and I did I made some verifications. It's really things are not things are not going very well out there for a lot of people who are not on the same page. And what is the Pastor Langford talks about being unequally yoked, and that goes for guests as well, or other people within your sphere of influence, family members, unequally yoked. Many levels there. So, but a lot of news. And I'm just wondering, ladies and gentlemen, if you really believe, we're going to be taking calls this evening as well, 661-244-9839, here at least the last half of the program, perhaps a little earlier. But I'm just wondering your feelings on the end game with respect to this Ebola crisis. I've got mine. Of course, it's to destroy the economy, to restrict travel, and of course force inoculations or vaccinations. The other part here, and I'll just really quick make mention of this, folks. While your eyes are focused on Ebola, Drudge is reporting, for example, tonight, that a key Democrat on the Federal Election Commission has called for some very intrusive new rules on internet-based campaigning. Now, what does that mean? Well, there is this attempt right now to regulate specifically conservative, politically conservative, but also morally and religious conservative websites and news outlets, including but not limited to the Drudge Report. The Democratic FEC Vice Chair Ann Ravel announced plans to begin the process to win regulations on internet-based campaigns and videos currently free from most FEC rules. That's the Federal Election Commission. This is, by itself, not necessarily a news-making item, except This is the proverbial nose of the camel under the tent. The restrictions for free speech on the internet are beginning to line up. The architecture is beginning to be set up. That the statement from this particular operative, this FEC vice chair, suggests that she will regulate conservative groups. For example, America Rising, that posts anti-democratic, now politically speaking here, anti-democratic YouTube videos on its website. The framework about this is merely political at this point. At least that's how it's being framed. But if you read and dig deeper, they plan to engage in meetings next year to discuss regulating the internet, period. The FEC Deputy Commissioner charged that groups placing regulated paid TV ads using the FEC exemption to run the same campaigns on the internet regulation free. In other words, she said that this is taking place and they're taking advantage. People like Drudge and other conservative sites are taking advantage of this exemption.
They say this is internet regulation and going to amount to censorship and basically personal preferences and like we see with the IRS behavior. But they call it's net neutrality. It's fairness. It's progress for the internet. It's
right.
It's an internet without what they deem right-wing Christian Tea Party hate speech. I mean, look, these people, I mean, we have to understand, we live in a democratic system where the person who's in power, the person who's in power, or who has been, the votes were fixed to show him as winner, that their team and all their fans, they get to say what they want. At the same time, get to choose who they want to be shut up. And when the next guy gets into office, them and their team and their fans will be able to turn around and do the same, I think. But, it's only fair that these people be allowed to spew actual hate speech while calling the truth hate and calling for it to be censored, and the people who talk about it to die.
Well, right, and don't forget what Coach Dave Dobmeyer, what he has said, that the truth is considered hate speech for those or by those who hate the truth, and that there's so much to that statement. Did I say that right?
No, I was laughing. It's a thought that went through my head. When you go to a commercial, shows brought to you by our sponsors. Here's a message from our sponsors. We should start issuing apologies, preemptive apologies.
And I'm sure there are people that would think that would be in order for us to do.
We apologize that we believe that Jesus Christ came here in the flesh, died as a sinless man, born of a virgin, died bearing the sins of all humanity, so all have the free gift of salvation through the belief in him. We apologize for believing that, and we are sorry that stating that is trying to shove it down your throats. But we will continue to stop everything we do every time the word gay marriage is mentioned.
Well, it's fighting the absurd with the absurd almost, and that's something that Rush Limbaugh does quite frequently on using his program. Not a fan of that, by the way, but because a lot of times the humor is lost, and it's really not a lot of the humor shouldn't even be humor anyway. But yeah, fighting the absurd with absurdities. Anyway,
we have to, we have to not laugh. If we're not going to have some type of humor in our life, if we can't keep a good balance of emotional happiness and joy while dealing with the things we deal with, we still live in, basically, as I stated with talking with Daniel Holdings earlier today, right now this is heaven on earth compared to how it's going to be. Even though it's terrible now, this is a utopia.
Yeah, it's only going to get much, much, much worse, and we're seeing it being set up here. The framework being set up, which I believe, people everywhere you turn, and we've said this as well. Just look at the Ebola situation. It doesn't make sense. None of the information that we're getting from the CDC or the renegade in chief, the executive branch, the slaughterhouses, Steve Quayle calls it, and none of the information makes sense. None of the actions of the government make sense. That is until you look through the news through a particular prism, whether it be biblical prophecy or through the prism of the playbook of the New World Order, global elite, satanic Luciferians, or even more so, we cannot ascribe incompetence to what is taking place. You would have to be, by definition, an idiot, and I mean that by definition, because they're definitions of idiots and morons, but by definition you'd have to be an idiot, and certainly I do not believe we're dealing with idiocy. Go ahead.
You bring up a good point, or you said something that sparked a thought in my mind about what we could be seeing, and the scriptures speak about this, about the in the last days a spirit of dumbness will be placed over man, and they will be a spirit of sleep, is what the Lord says. And there's many verses that also talk about how the Lord will make the wise foolish. Just an example. For my people is full here. Therefore I shall surely, these are poor, they are foolish, they know not the way of the Lord, nor the judgment of their God. Or the one from Ecclesiastes is the best, in my opinion. But not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? And there's a few others that the Lord will turn the wise men into fools through their own knowledge. And back to the Isaiah reference, there is in Ezekiel and Isaiah scriptures that talk about the Lord pouring out a spirit of sleep over a people to make them not be able to see, to make them not be able to understand. In Isaiah 29, chapter 29, verse 10, for the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes, and your prophets, your rulers, your seers, he hath covered up. Right. And it goes on from there to talk about the because you are not strong or not sure in your faith, the Lord will pull out a spirit of deep sleep upon you, and your wise men, the ones that are learned, will have no understanding at all. And it goes on to say, the Lord say, for so much as this people draw near to me with their mouth and with their lips do honor me, they have removed from their heart far from me, and fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among these people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of the wise men shall perish, and the understanding of the prudent men shall be hid. And it goes on to talk about the people who take counsel seek to hide their counsels deep from the Lord, that they won't be seen, saying, "Who seeth us? Who knoweth us?" And
yes. Go on. I mean, you can continue. Well, I'll tell you what. Have you noticed more from our programming here? A little bit more references to and also concordance with the Holy Bible, scriptures and verses. You know, in these to make sense of these end times, as I've said before, we've got to consult the book that has the answers, and that book has the answers. Otherwise, we will be lost, and we will be the ones that will be dumbed it down. And as much as I don't like that statement as a characterization, that's essentially what will happen. And so, I think you're right on. You're spot on with that. Anyway, one thing I wanted to do, folks, before we get into the major news, including Ebola and the fallout from that, Holder, of course, there's news coming out about Holder, the Fast and Furious about his resignation, and Valerie Jarrett helping manage the fallout over his resignation and hiding all of these documents. Jarrett's a key player in all of this. We know all of this, but how does all of this fit into what's going on today? And I think that all of these issues, and even the current select committee, the select committee on Benghazi, that you hear nothing about, even that has some ties to what's taking place today. Because, after all, what Hillary Rodham Clinton is doing, of course, is setting herself up to take over after Obama, if that is to be. And I do believe, based on the Illuminati guidelines, or the CFR, Trilateral Commission, the Skull and Bones, whatever the guidelines would be, it's always anyone with the most royalty in their blood is selected and appointed or elected as the President of the United States. Now, whether that would be Hillary Rodham Clinton or not remains to be seen. Don't forget the decision in 2008 was made at a CFR meeting in Chantilly, Virginia, and Obama got the nod after both sides presented their cases. Now, but before we get into all that, one announcement too. I'll just make this announcement. On Monday, we have a special program on Monday due to scheduling conflicts. Here is going to be our schedule next week. Monday, Timothy Alberino and Steve Quayle. True legends. And the focus is going to be on Timothy Alberino's most recent findings with respect to the Nephilim, and True Legends, and how all of this, or how his findings of previous historic mythological type events, or in that realm, what many consider it to be in that realm, are going to be playing out in the coming days. So that's Monday. Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino from the Alberino Analysis.
Yeah, and I want to say this to those who don't know. Timothy Alberino, the Alberino Analysis on YouTube. Steve Quayle links to it on his site. He does excellent YouTube breakdowns, further discussion of topics that we've talked about on our show when he has been a guest, and other topics pertaining to the Nephilim, the giants, the return of the giants, the genetic engineering manipulation, and the things we see today. That's the Alberino Analysis on YouTube for an extended breakdown, extended comprehensive breakdown of things that we get into here on the show.
Right. Yeah, precisely. Now, Tuesday, Stan Dale will be with us, and of course, Wednesday, now a very special program on Wednesday, we are going to be joined by Joe. Wednesday will be drum roll,
Mr. Daniel Holding.
Daniel Holdings.
He has a new book. Yeah, we have it. He was a guest on the show a few times. He's been a guest on the show. He's an author. And he has a new book coming out, and he is sending it to us, and I think he said he has sent it to us, but he's resending it to us. And we are going to have a PDF copy, but the book is just been released, I believe, from speaking with him today. And it's a fictional book, but it's based on the facts of the world today and the situations that we are in, the world is in, economically, politically, spiritually. Those are true. The what is false or what is fiction is the characters and the storyline to an extent. But I'll let him explain that on Wednesday. It's probably, if it's anything like his last books, it's going to be a great read. He incorporates a lot of, when we talked today, we had very similar ideas on what was wrong with the church, what was going on in the world with people, believers and non-believers, and ideas on how to help advise people on the right way to go about correcting things, or at least putting yourself in a position to let the Lord correct you.
Okay. Now, do we have Thursday locked in yet?
Yes, we do. Thursday we will be joined by Mr. Nathan Liao. And he has had, you're going to like this, and I can't tell you on air. He asked me not to say anything, but he has received a word from the Lord pertaining to Ebola, and also pertaining to something very similar or very close in proximity to what you said earlier in this week about a feeling you had about something. And I'll leave that alone.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And so that's just to give you a little bit of a taste for what's on tap next week. I will be working, excuse me, I still have this frog in my throat. I will be working this weekend to update the numerous files that have to be placed on Hagmann.com, including the schedule. So please, folks, check back on Hagmann.com this weekend for news and other reports that are going to be extremely critical as we enter into next week and really through the end of the year. So that's that. Let me address what I was going to do here. I wanted to talk about something, folks, that you may or may not have heard about, and touch on what we talked about yesterday with respect to. Go ahead.
I want to paint a picture of what happens when I came in the studio today. So I come in the studio and I hear music before I get in the door, and it was an Eminem song, the rapper Eminem, and I come in and my dad's listening to it, looking at him, kind of funny, thinking, what is he doing? Why is he listening to this?
Eminem, yes.
And he has been doing extensive research on the depths of the satanic elements in music.
Well, not only in music,
more.
but in Hollywood, and of course Hollywood, the Hollywood being an important part of the magic rituals, and how this relates to what we've been talking about, so we can be a little bit more coherent when we talk about current events as they relate to the satanic, as they relate to the Luciferian agenda. Now, although I think we've been doing pretty well with this, especially with the help of fantastic guests like Russ Dizdar and Nathan Liao and others, there's this issue where people don't have a tendency, or they've got a tendency not to believe that, for example, that just do this. Someone you don't normally talk to about these types of things, just go out and mention, hey, did you know that the Super Bowl commercials were really an Illuminati messaging system to tell us what was coming, and what they have planned. yeah, you're going to get shot down really quickly. But if you've got some really hardcore ammo for that, in terms of the documentation, I think that you can make or hold your own in the debate, or at least get them to take a look at what what the evidence, what your evidence might be. That's kind of how we're approaching this. From in an attempt to get people who are not up on this, as you folks are, most of you folks are, to listen, to begin to listen, and to begin to win souls, because we are fighting indeed the powers of and principalities of darkness. I mean, I'm absolutely convinced that the fight in which we're engaged is so vile. It is so. I mean, it's in the heavens, and it's between good and evil, and it's been going on for quite some time. Having said that, before we get into that, I just want to address an email I received that it has in the subject line, and I suppose we can finish out this hour talking about this, because when it all comes down to it, I believe that this is representative of many people out there. The subject line, and I want to thank you very much, Renee, for sending me this email. Once more, the questions the questions that you raise, the observations that you make, are on the minds of many and actually cause confusion among the masses. And Joe, you did not have a chance to see this. I'm going to basically read this, or paraphrase it, read it, and then we can discuss this, because this is really at the heart. This strikes at the heart of what many people are thinking, wrestling with, and trying to determine what's really taking place. Renee writes, "Thank you so much for all you do. Shed light on the things that are happening all around us. Now, you're a private investigator, and I hope that you can possibly dig into exactly who these recent Ebola victims are, because something just is not right." That's correct. Number one, why have all of the victims, including the doctor in New York, been to and or traveled by highly populated methods, such as planes and subways and cabs and you name it, thereby exposing dozens, if not hundreds of people only hours before they seek treatment? That's the question number one. Now, at the end of this email, we'll address all of this and give you our thoughts. Number two, our thoughts based on research and investigation, interviews, and also through that Illuminati type of Luciferian agenda. So number two, how is it that Ebola is so deadly, and this particular strain has a 70% fatality rate, yet the first nurse, Nina Pham, is Ebola-free? She looks great, and she's up to a press conference and a meet and a hug with the renegade in chief. And lo and behold, the second nurse, Amber Vincent, is also Ebola-free and looking pretty darn good in the selfie she took from her hospital bed. I can tell you, when I get a bad stomach flu, I look and feel a lot worse than these girls.
Yeah, I saw that picture, and with the caption like "party time," something along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't even feel like partying right now. But hopefully that's just speaking to the good spirits that she's in, and letting people know that although she was basically condemned in a public way, in many people's minds, to a death sentence, not understanding that there are ways that Ebola can be you can be cured from Ebola. Hopefully, it was done in a way that she was just trying to say she's okay, she's mentally fine, and she's physically okay. She's getting through it, and she's keeping a good attitude while doing so.
Well, I don't believe that. Was there, Joe? Was there a definitive diagnosis of Ebola on either one of these nurses, Amber Vincent or Nina Pham? Was there a diagnosis that yes, they were indeed infected with the Ebola virus? Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay, hold on to that thought, because
it was
Renee
reported.
Continues. So. Okay, well, Renee continues. And this is where most people are today in 5 words. Something just doesn't add up. You feel that way? Something just doesn't add up. She writes, I'm beginning to wonder if any of these people ever had Ebola. Could they be crisis actors? If they did have it, is the strain significantly weakened? Or why is it that these ladies have had such a mild case? Why were they purposely exposing people when they knew they were at risk of catching the disease? She also asks, what is the religion of these people? Could they be part of a sleeper terrorist cell group trying to spread Ebola in our country? And then she continues with the questions. Why does Thomas Duncan, who is a Liberian national, have an American name? Now I'll throw another question in there, Renee. Who paid for the plane ticket from West Africa to Dallas?
And another question is, why were there so many pictures taken of this guy?
Inquiring minds want to know. And she continues, how is it medical personnel in full hazmat suits get Ebola, yet none of Duncan's family has caught it, even though they were with him while he was very, very sick, and they stayed in the contaminated home for days? Why have none of the other unprotected people gotten it, such as the ambulance personnel, the cleanup crew, medical personnel from his first visit to the ER, and so on? As you can see, I've got a lot of questions and no answers. So if you find the time to look into these things, I would greatly appreciate knowing what you can find out. What a great email with respect to Ebola, or the Ebola pandemic, epidemic, whatever you might want to call this, that we're looking at. And this is really, all of these questions are at the heart of what we're seeing today, are they not? I mean, but those 5 words really ring true. Something just doesn't add up, even to the most staunch anti-conspiracy-minded person, or the person who believes that everything is as the government says it is, are beginning to have doubts. To answer these questions, and we are searching for the answers as well, as hard as we can and as deeply as we can. We have not clear-cut answers, but certainly a desk full or a tabletop full of possibilities. And we can further narrow down these possibilities by looking at each individual case, by taking each of these cases and putting them as one, or considering Ebola as one singular crisis, and comparing the events, or comparing this to, for example, what we're not being told about other things. But let's just stick with the Ebola questions for right now. How can this possibly be? We know Ebola Zaire, we know the Ebola strains, the Ebola discussed by Ken Alabek in his book about bioterrorism. We know that the Ebola talked about by Steve Quayle in Breathe No Evil. We know about the Ebola discussed in numerous other books is deadly, and it's a hemorrhagic fever, and we're not seeing any blood. As Steve said probably a week and a half ago to me on the phone. Just like the Wendy's commercial, where's the beef? Where's the blood? Are we missing some blood here in the images? Where
Nathan will add to this Thursday, in what he was given by the Lord, a understanding on the types, the strains. He was given a number of how many strains were going around.
I can almost guess the number, but we'll leave that for Nathan to disclose. Well, I believe, Renee and listeners, looking at this for many, many hours and talking with as many people as possible about this, from Dave Hodges and Steve Quayle to others within the government and doctors and a few doctors actually and some healthcare professionals, as well as some people within the intelligence circles. I believe what we're seeing here is a form, a genetically modified, altered form of Ebola. And this, at least as much as I've been able to determine at this point, the working hypothesis, at least my working hypothesis, is that this is round one of a continuing crisis. Ease into it, use a particular strain, and the strain might even be some sort of genetically have some what would you call it, maybe be able to affect one race over another, somebody with certain DNA characteristics over yet another. It may be a very precise strain. And I certainly believe that the CDC, in particular Frieden, the spokesman, is not telling the truth about this. You have to also toss into the mix the fact that the flights, 100 people a day, are coming from the hot zone in West Africa into the United States without being stopped, or without any type of anything more than a simple few questions or some prophylactic style assessments being made, even at this point. So what's the real goal here? Let's take a few steps back and see what the real goal here is. And we can turn to Dave Hodges' fabulous research about the patents, the different patents, both on the virus as well as the vaccines, potential vaccines. Who benefits? Who stands to benefit by all of this? And back to your questions, can these people be really that stupid? And I use that purposely. Can they be that ignorant where they would say, well, especially in the case of this last doctor, this most recent case in New York City, well, the CDC gave me clearance to travel, although, yeah, I was feeling a little bit punky before I did. Oh, yeah, and I did tell them that I did just come back from Guinea. Yeah, they said it was okay for me to travel and do things. Now we have this positive, and I use that word positive, or confirmed case, in quotation marks, I suppose, because of the test that they have, or that they claim to have used, is not necessarily reliable. Now, there are reliable tests, and Steve Quayle will tell you this, and you can read from his site the numerous headlines and also his notations about what he believes. But yeah, I mean, there are tests that can be done right away to determine whether it's Ebola or not. So are the tests that these people are being subjected to, are they accurate? Well, that's a great question. I mean, are we looking at a mutated type of a virus? And I believe that this has been weaponized. I really believe that this is the product of a laboratory. Well, we know, or we at least have reasonable suspicion that the original incarnation of Ebola, at least the contemporary incarnation of Ebola going back to the mid-1970s, was a product of laboratory mischief, at the very least, if not criminality. But I think what we're seeing here is the product of a mutated form of Ebola for the purpose of ultimately restricting travel, restricting commerce, and pushing a vaccine altogether. I mean, it's a multi-purpose crisis. Now, what about depopulation? What about the fact that Ebola does have a higher fatality rate than what we're seeing right now? Well, there are a couple of possibilities, and just to reaffirm, having talked with Steve, look, you might get a vaccine, for example, that will lie dormant within your body, that when combined with perhaps another vaccine, or left without having a second dose, could be fatal. This is just supposition, but informed supposition. There are numerous other possibilities as it relates to Ebola itself, but the fallout, the blowback, the collateral damage being done to our economy, isn't it a goal of the Committee of 300, the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the people, the power brokers, the eugenicists, those people? Isn't it the goal to destroy? Well, their ultimate goal is to create the one world government, the single world religion, and single world commerce, digital currency. Just wait, by the way, until they disclose or say that, hey, you know, the Federal Reserve notes you're using, or the money you're using, the paper money, well, we just learned, or we have reason to believe that it's contaminated. So turn all of your money, your paper money, in, and we will give you a card or a digital bank balance from which you can use. Now, maybe initially it'll be a card, like an ATM card, or maybe it'll be some other digital device. But ultimately, we're working toward a global economy. In the backdrop of all this, and I believe that I was the first to report about the killing of the dollar, the interview, or the mention Kyle Bass, with the interview between Kyle Bass and the Obama cabinet official who he interviewed, who I believe personally and professionally, I believe it was Timothy Geithner at the time, that the answer to the debt and the multiple crises with respect to the U.S. dollar would be just to kill the dollar, which is seditious, treasonous, and of course would destroy our national sovereignty. So ultimately, this is all in the mix. I think everyone right now has got to really quietly think. And I was telling Joe, I mean, look, folks, you, as far as I'm concerned, of all the audiences out there in the talk radio circuit, you folks are, and this is not false flattery, I believe you folks are the cream of the crop when it comes to making assessments, because you do so through the prism of the word through Scripture, and you do so with great consideration. You have great analytical skills. So we're going to be looking to you for your thoughts as well later in the program, but ultimately this is what I believe, and I think, Joe, I don't know, are you on me or with me on that? I mean, it's not necessarily in this case right at the moment. Yes, it's a bad situation. Ebola is, in fact, I mean, we're being lied to, and this is bad. However, there's a big another agenda at play here, and it's focused on really striking down the economy and fast-tracking this New World Order, this single global governance, as well as and everything that goes with it, of course, the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. I mean, think about this, the Cloward-Piven strategy of overwhelming the system and overloading the system. This has got all of the possibilities built into it. And although you might ask, well, why not just kill everybody right now, for crying out loud? Why not release a real thing, right?
And that's a fair question when learning about the things that are going on and why, who's in control and what the end goals are. But although they will kill you, they don't want to, their goal is not to kill you. The goal is to take your soul away from its destination in heaven, belonging to the Lord.
There it is.
And in order to do that, they need to keep you alive. Because
okay, stop. Think about this. How many martyrs for God did Hitler create? How many martyrs for God did Pol Pot create? Do you think that hacked off Satan a little bit?
Look at Rome. Through martyrdom, they basically launched Christianity into the worldwide religion it once was in its prime. Precisely. Let's go to the top of the hour break.
Yeah.
When we come back, let's start with a phone call or two, and then we'll get into some news and go back.
What
to
about
the
my
phone
stuff?
Well,
what about my stuff?
We'll get to your stuff. But what I want to do is there's a few people in the chat who've let me know that they're when you mentioned calls earlier that they called in, they were on hold. So I don't want to.
That's fine.
We'll integrate those calls in after the top of the hour break. And a quick word from our sponsors. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, this fabulous Friday edition, or frantic Friday edition, depending on how your day's going, October 24th, 2014. We'll be right back after
we do a very special Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is a live broadcast, 24th day of October 2014. Doug and Joe in the studio. Don't forget, folks, next month on the 14th and 15th of November, we'll see you in Columbus, or more precisely, Dublin, Ohio, for the Prophecy Forums conference there. We'll be there and doing some things, apparently, hopefully doing a live broadcast as well as doing one of the presentations, I believe. You can look at the updated schedule. Chris Putnam will be there, as will Russ Dizdar and Greg Evenson and others. You can look at the updated schedule. Click on the left-hand side of our website, HagmannandHagmann.com. Click on the big red banner. It'll take you to the forums homepage. There you can register and see the schedule. Now, just my hats off to Joe. Earlier, I think it was yesterday, perhaps, he, during the show, he had made an incredible observation, and this was reported today by Paul Joseph Watson in InfoWars. Did you hear what Joe said the president did say? We did not have the ability to upload the clip, but according to the renegade in chief, Barry Soetoro, he said this at a was it a news conference? These were remarks made after a White House meeting with the administration's Ebola response coordinator, Ron Klain. Now, here's the key sentence here that Obama said. Buckle up for this. And Renee, this might speak to your question as well. If there's a silver lining in all the attention that Ebola situation has received over the last several weeks, it's a reminder of how important our public health systems are. Okay. And in many ways, what this has what this has done is elevated that importance. So we're digging in on Obamacare. Now, here's the real money quote right here. And I quote, "There may come a time, sometime in the future, where we are dealing with an airborne disease that is much easier to catch and is deadly. And in some ways, this," meaning the Ebola situation, "has created a trial run for federal, state, and public health officials and healthcare providers, as well as the American people, to understand the nature of that and why it's so important that we're continually building out our public systems, but we're also practicing them and keeping them in tip-top shape and investing in them." Okay. Could this be, or have we just been told what is taking place by this renegade in chief? Did he let it slip, or did he attempt to condition us? Is this a matter of predictive programming? No. I mean, well, how about conditioning us?
Yeah, I wrote up a little article, I think a week ago, and we didn't publish it, but the vice president and the president gave separate speeches on separate days to separate crowds, and both had a similar message, that the world was spiraling out of control. Biden said the world is fraying at the seams. President said the world is spinning out of control and doing so fast that nobody will be able to stop it.
I have the article here. Do you want me to? Do you have it in front of you?
No, I don't have it pulled up. But we're in a election period where people are aligning or distancing themselves from the current administration for their political aspirations of becoming a senator or a member of the House. We have all this rhetoric from these different leaders of the House and Senate, from Wasserman Schultz saying that the economy's never been better, jobless numbers never been better, to the president saying the border's never been more secure. Just all these fabrications that couldn't be further from the truth. They still run around and claim Obama cut the debt in half when the debt when he took office was between 9 and 10 trillion. It's now 17 trillion. But they claim he cut it in half. What they claim and what they're saying is that he cut his own first presidential term deficit. The first presidential term deficit he had, he, in his second term, cut the first terms in half. If that made sense. They didn't cut the national debt in half, as it had more than doubled under the president. But they're running around talking like they have rid America of joblessness, poverty, and have also implemented a healthcare system that is basically free and all-inclusive. And then to see them saying these things. And Joe Biden took it a step further and went on to talk about little green men with no allegiance to any country being used as a way for a nation to get a political agenda through, or a war by proxy, from what he said. Little green men with allegiance to no specific country. Just weird references. He also quoted a poet from
and that's exactly
referencing Easter Rising in 1916, saying, "A terrible beauty has been born."
And that's a reference to the poet W.B. Yeats describing the torn emotions. Describing Easter Rising, which was staged in Ireland against the British rule on Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916. Biden's obsession with Yeats as well as the uprising is interesting to say the least. And you've got looking at this, you've got to really consider some of the insiders information. When somebody repeats or has a continuation with or an infatuation with a particular person or an event, you've got to wonder exactly where that comes from. Vice President Biden gave this bizarre speech. The world is literally fraying at the seams, as Joe mentioned, and that he quoted, he said, "A terrible beauty has been born." Later in the speech, other powers like Russia are using new asymmetrical forms of coercion to seek advantage, like corruption and little green men, and, quote, "foreign agents, soldiers with a mission but no official uniform." Yeah, you expect me to see that, right? Let's see here. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll get to that here in a second. At any rate, folks, what Joe was making reference to, and I believe the underlying sentiment here is Biden telegraphing events that are related to, mimic, or somehow are connected to the Irish uprising in 1916, and it's interesting to know if you look at Yeats and who is, by the way, a committed nationalist. If you look at his thoughts on this revolution, it does have a tendency to suggest that perhaps Biden is, well, engaged in some predictive programming of his own, perhaps, or even some conditioning, if you will. So, interesting how this plays out. So, yes, there are some odd statements that were made by Biden and Obama, indeed. Now, I know that we're going to be going to the phone here momentarily. Joe just passed a note here, apparently a pretty massive solar flare. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Or?
Yesterday, Holly Dale wrote an article, and Stan talked about this solar flare that was facing Earth. It is about the size of Jupiter, and there is an X 3.1 class solar flare. Now, I'm trying to find out if this was Earth-directed or not. Let's see. I'm on NOAA's space weather alerts and warnings at the moment, but they say here, let's see, on the preliminary report here, it says a strong radio blackout is in progress. We said it remained a threat, and here it is, producing another R3 strong radio blackout at this time, and the threat is still continuing to climb. The event began at 5:07 p.m. Eastern, or 8:07 p.m. 5:07 p.m. Eastern time, and it's still ongoing. 30 minutes later, the main communication impacts from this event are over the Pacific Ocean. In the meantime, forecasters remain vigilant to see if there is an associated coronal mass ejection. Goes on to state that there are going to be disturbances in communications, the possibility for even more, and this event is not over. It is an ongoing event. This is the sixth strongest solar flare in this solar cycle, a major 3.1x solar flare, peaking at 21:40 UTC Friday evening. To our surprise, just like all previous events, little to no CME appears to be associated, and there is more information at spaceweather.com, also at solarham.net, and any other monitoring site. They have the solarmonitor.org. NOAA also does the solar monitoring. Space weather, one of my favorites. So keep your eye on that. Not sure how, it's obviously Earth-directed if it's affecting areas over the Pacific Ocean at the moment, but the potential impact area consists of large portions of sunlit side of Earth, strongest at the subsolar point, radio-wide area blackout of the HF high-frequency radio communications for about an hour. That's
so
the
does that
latest.
mean we can take an hour off here, or what? Or we might be forced to. Right?
I don't think so.
No?
We need to somehow put our studio underneath that sunlight. No, but
we're covered with SPF 1000 here. So okay, interesting. Well, thank you for that information.
And thank the person in chat for the alert to that.
Speaking of thank yous, I want to thank you, Carrie S., for sending this to me. Suspicious Canada shooting triggers Minority Report pre-crime plans for preventative arrests. Very interesting how this is playing out. You know, we did not spend a whole lot of time talking about the Canadian shooting at Parliament. On Wednesday, just after a quote radicalized man ran over two Canadian soldiers in a mall parking lot. Of course, gunmen opened fire at Canada's National War Memorial, and then again at Parliament Hill, killing one soldier at the War Memorial, killing one soldier and wounding a security guard. He was later killed by an armed guard. Within less than 2 days, of course, rhetoric has risen unusually high for Canada in the wake of what have been called terror attacks, bringing terrorism home, along with fresh demands for new police powers. Are we getting the picture, folks? The 9/11 style blowback. Now, this time, the new powers would include preventative arrests, potentially taking the country down the slippery slope of guilty until proven innocent authoritarian powers, policies, that is. Now, CBC made reference to this. The Public Safety Minister, Stephen Blaney, is giving more indications of how the government will be addressing and strengthening Canada's security laws in the wake of Wednesday's attack. And how are they going to do that? Well, there's talk now of ramping up Canada's hate speech laws. There was a bill already in the works even before the shootings began to strengthen the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, powers.
Did the shooter say something before he went on his rampage, or?
There were reports that he did say Allah Akbar and began shooting. There were several reports, and I think some of the audio, which is indistinguishable to me, some of the audio might have caught some of that, the audio at the Parliament building. But it's interesting because, indeed, the shooting itself, along with the previous incident, does this not remind you of the events following 9/11, 2001? Very convenient, as a matter of fact, for the agenda of the government.
Yes, it is, in more than one way. As you know, we talked about but did not get into the specifics of this. The Council on Foreign Relations releasing a new plan. The plan is called Time for a New Focus, Building a North American Union. The plan was released just this last month, and it focuses on the integration of Mexico, Canada, and the United States as a borderless one hemisphere. Well, they have the Western Hemisphere Initiative, but that's a bigger consolidation than the North American Union, but this encompasses the three countries into energy, economic, security, community, consolidation, with the conclusion of the new world of the North America.
Well, and believe me, any type of consolidation obviously is treasonous and seditious by itself, but even the talk, and of course, folks, this is not an anti-Obama thing, because this is ongoing for a number of administrations before Obama. But it's interesting because questions are being asked right now where this jihadist even got his Winchester .30-30 rifle he used in the shooting. Hey, wait a minute. Unlike
Canada
America,
is a continent or country-free zone or gun-free country.
There's no constitutional right to
even have guns.
Well, the Canadian Supreme Court ruled in 1993 that there's no right by any citizen to bear arms. So where did this guy with a criminal record get the gun? That's a question that has yet to be answered. There are
10-1, Eric Holder.
Yeah, sadly.
In those classified documents, I bet the answer lies somewhere in there. Those 15,000 documents being classified by the administration illegally for no justifiable legal reason.
Right. It does beg the question, but this is horrible. Now, you want to get into some calls now, because I do want to talk about an incident that took place, and I'll just set this up very quickly, folks. There was a shooting in Washington State today. I don't know if you've heard about this. A student opened fire Friday in a high school cafeteria just north of Seattle, in a school north of Seattle, killing one person and shooting several others in the head before killing himself. The students in the cafeteria, so the gunman stared at the students as he shot them. This occurred at the Marysville High School in Marysville, Washington. He had a little gun in his hand, and by all accounts, this student, the shooter was a student at the school. The school is located 30 miles north of Seattle, and everything about the shooter, as well as other facts, are being shut down at the moment. We're not getting anything. Simply stated, the young man walked into the cafeteria, pulled out a gun, and just began shooting. No arguing, no yelling, no chaos, or nothing. It was nothing that seemingly would have caused him to do this. And I've got something to say about this in more detail, but before we do, perhaps we should go to the phones. And by the way, what I have to say about this is, well,
write it down so you don't forget.
No, I was just trying to think of how best to really say this, but I guess it's the children are being taken from us, and Russ Dizdar talks about the children, about the programming of our children, about the capturing of our children, and what Hollywood is doing. We're seeing sleepers, I believe, being awakened, and I'll tell you, I'll give you a little bit of background, things that maybe you have not heard yet, but we'll do that here in a little bit. Let's go to the phones, Joe.
All right, we're going to take a call from Byron. Byron, welcome to the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Doug, Joe, how are you guys tonight?
Good, thanks, man.
Well, I wanted to touch on a few points. Starting with the beginning of the program, you mentioned about the tensions in people's relationships that are exploding. And everything that we're undergoing now, I had a message for the body of Christ, including myself, and it just came to me this afternoon. I was like, I need to call in and tell this. But I've having me in my personal circle of life here, and we're all experiencing these tensions of life within our own personal relationships, no matter what kind of relationships they are. And what it is the pressures of life and of the system that is collapsing around us. And it's the truth that is manifesting in the remnant and the true body of Christ. And that leads me to bring up Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12, which says that for the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And what this is saying is, as we take in more truth, as we become more active in the study of the Word of God, as we apply these principles in our lives, and we become more Christ-like, these tensions are going to increase because God's Word is separating us from the world. And wives and husbands will be divided, fathers and sons and daughters, as Jesus said. And we need to be aware of this, and we need to be cognizant daily in our lives about the spiritual warfare that is going on behind the scenes, not just on the global geopolitical scale, but on each of us every day. And the reason we need to be aware of this is because we can get bogged down, really bogged down, in the day's anxieties. And, Christ said to let each day's anxiety be, sufficient for its own, because tomorrow will have its own problems, okay? But the reason we need to do this is to focus on the Word of God first and foremost, Jesus Christ, and applying His words in our lives, is because in Luke chapter 21, where he's giving the composite sign of the end of days here, and it says in verse 26, it says, people will faint from fear and expectation of the things that are coming upon the world, because of the celestial powers will be shaken. And that harkens back to the Ephesians chapter 6, where it talks about the 4 types of spiritual powers that we have to wrestle against, and we have to put on the armor of God. And this is why we have to put on the armor of God, so we can be, as in verse 34 of chapter 21 Luke, be on guard so that our minds are not dulled from carousing, from drunkenness, and from worries of life, or that day will come upon you unexpectedly, like a trap. For it will come on all who live on the face of the whole earth. But be alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and stand before the Son of Man. And to speak to this, all these things that are going on, the Ebola, the crisis with ISIS, the Ukrainian crisis, the worldwide economic crisis, all these things are a multi-spectrum attack on all of us, and it's to keep us in a state of panic and fear. Now, on a spiritual side, these are all manifestations of the spiritual war that we cannot see with our eyes, but we can discern with our hearts. And these things we need just to take as they are, and we need to focus on the Word of God and focus on our relationship with God and keep the prayers daily, because we can't handle these things all at once, and that's why men will faint out of fear. Their hearts will fail them, okay? And this whole thing with Ebola, now I wanted to speak to this thing about what Doug said earlier. My position about the Ebola is this. We as people, no matter where you are in the world, you can't afford to take the Ebola crisis lightly. I personally believe that the Ebola crisis is a cover for the collapsing economy. It is the pretext by which they will collapse the world economy. However, that being said, I also personally believe that I cannot take this and say, well, this is a false flag, because but we have to prepare for this. like W said. Now, I have my disagreements with W sometimes, and if he wants to call in tonight and speaks to this, he may. It would be kind of nice to hear from him again. But W said something I think about 4 weeks ago that was very pertinent to this. He says, "It's now's not the time to panic, but now is the time to prepare." And that's really what we need to do. Do you have your water? Can you live off the system, independent of the water system? Can you live on food, independent of the system? Just do the best you can. Okay, it's not going to hurt you. I've lived in Florida for all my life, and I have been through 5 major hurricanes, including Hurricane Ivan. And where I was, we had martial law after that, and people were lined up because no one prepared. Including me. I was not prepared at the time. Okay, people were dependent upon government. People were pulling guns on each other over gas. Now, that's nowhere in near comparison to what happened to Katrina. But this was before Katrina, and people had more money then, and they still took no note. And as Proverbs says, we need to take the time that we have. We see the danger coming. We need to prepare. And preparing is not showing a lack of faith in God, in my view. Preparing is actually exercising faith in God, because the Word, Jesus Christ, has given us these things for us to look at as an example. Proverbs says, "Look at the ant and take note. They store away food for the time." Okay? What are your thoughts, Joe and Doug?
I'm 100% behind what you said. Yes, of course. Look, when somebody says don't panic, obviously, panic itself is completely unproductive and will get you killed. Okay.
Yeah. It's an emotional response.
Right. Now, having said that, and I like the way you framed it, because no, I don't diminish, or that should not diminish the threat posed by whatever mutation of this Ebola that we're seeing. So we have to strike a very delicate balance there. However, what you said about the economy, to me, is exactly what is taking place as a cover. Because, and the other thing too, the United States will be made to look like a pariah. In other words, all of the blame will fall, I believe, onto the United States, whether it's a global economic collapse or whatever. But certainly that would explain the world looking at the United States, looking at this Obama and Barry Soetoro and saying, wait a minute, you're the one that allowed this to spread, and you're the one that's America is responsible for the collapse of the global economy, because, of course, as America goes, so does the world in terms of the economy, or the same could be said for Europe. But yes, so I think you're spot on, 100%.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
I would say this, that there are preparations that we can take to, help us in times of societal breakdown. But one thing I just want to stress that I believe is not stressed enough, is that we need to put our hope and our faith in the Lord wholeheartedly. The preps we have are material, and they are there not to put faith in to keep us alive, but therefore to help us along the process. Without the spiritual preparation, everything else is worthless. And we need to make sure that we put the Lord first and not depend on the preparations, or not think that those will be sufficient to protect us in the times that are coming.
I agree 100%. And I'm reminded of that scripture, I believe it was in Revelations, where the kings of the earth and the merchants of the earth are under pressure from the judgments of God, and they're throwing their coins, their gold and silver, out into the streets because it's worthless. I agree 100%. There will come a time when these material possessions that we have will no longer facilitate the purpose that of our life, and I agree.
Keywords,
100%.
though. I'm sorry. Your key words are there will come a time. That's down the road quite a ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what people really take, they jump to conclusions on is that when you hear people talk about preparation, whether it be spiritual, mental, or physical preparation, they try to isolate one and say one is better than the other, and I think a balance between all of them, with probably spiritual being at the top, is the key. And one of the things is I have learned, in dealing with people, and this goes back to making the spiritual preparations now, as Joe was just bringing out. Make sure our families are prepared. Make sure our spouses are prepared. Make sure you're on the same page spiritually, because we are under attack, all of us, all of us, and it's in our personal relationships with our wives, our children, our parents. A prophet, and I'm not a prophet, by the way. A prophet is never believed or welcomed in his hometown. We are getting information, okay? I believe through the Spirit of God, through this broadcast, through other sources of information. Even though we're not we may not go to a church, a building, a 501c3 corporation. We are still getting the information, because Christ said that if there was no one there to teach us, the stones would cry out. So we're getting the information, and our desire to save people is causing us to talk about it, okay? Because we want people to live. We care for people. Now, this is where spiritual discernment comes in. We are to be as doves, peaceful as doves, but as cautious as serpents. Now, with that in mind, we need to use the spiritual discernment. Pray for spiritual discernment. Pray for strength. Put on that armor of God. Then you go to battle. And you can't go to battle with just this information without the spiritual component. And that's the key. You have to have the spiritual discernment, the spiritual component to this information, so we can understand and comprehend and deal with these calamities that are coming up on the earth. Because I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to speak to everybody out there, it's going to be a very scary time when the battle of Armageddon gets here. And whether you believe in a pre-trib or post-trib doesn't really matter. If you are alive and if you are alive at the time to see these things, it will be a scary time. Christ said it would be.
And even the lead up to that.
I'm sorry? Go ahead.
The lead up to that, you said Armageddon is going to be a scary time. I was listening to a sermon from David Wilkerson today titled Satan's Final War Plan, and he talked about the great falling away, and saying that those who have or are already lost to Satan can't fall away from God. And he goes on to state that the Battle of Armageddon is just is nothing compared to the spiritual battle waged for the souls of men and the true believers in Christ. And he compared how the strategies of war changed, how Satan changed the strategies of war to, and he made the example of Iraq, and an old king of Israel, where the enemy came in with thousands of troops and tanks and armor, not to attack the forces and civilians, but for one purpose, to kill one man, and that was the ruler or the rulers of the kingdom, to kill the leadership, and the people will run and hide. Well, that's what Satan is doing now in the body of Christ. He is trying to kill those who are who have found Jesus, believe in Him, trust in Him, and have set their hearts on growing and learning with in Him. And those are the people He is targeting. He is not going after people that He already has under His control, because that would be a waste of time. So the believers are the targets, 100% of the targets.
I agree 100%. And the tactic that you just were talking about that Satan uses is the same tactic that is used by authoritarian regimes and in more subtle ways by democratic Western governments, is when you take out the ringleaders of any kind of movement, or you undermine them to where you compromise their spirituality, you compromise their moral high ground, then you can control them. And then when they are controlled, then you can control the people that listen to them. And this is where testing the spirit comes in. No matter who we are, whether it be myself, you listen to what I'm saying tonight, Doug, Joe, anybody, any guest we have on, doesn't matter. We test the spirits, we take it to the Word of God, and we be like the Bereans and Paul, as Paul mentioned in Acts. And, the Great Tribulation is going to be like no other time and place before or since. And back during the Roman times, of the later times of the Judean administration in Jerusalem, when the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem and they laid siege to Jerusalem, I believe, for 2 years. And there was no one coming in or out of that city. And they had to resort to cannibalism in that city. And these are the kind of things that, are horrible to think about, okay? But they have taken place. And people, I'm not saying cannibalism is going to happen, but you have to understand the depth of depravity that the human condition will reach before Christ and the saints come to liberate us and bring us all back. These things have to take place, and they will. So I just wanted to touch on that, tonight, and we need to pray. We really need to pray and draw close to God, and He will draw close to us, and He will deliver us every day as long as we rely upon Him.
Amen, Banner.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, guys. I'm gonna get off, guys, so other people can come in and have the chat. But you guys take care, and I appreciate really what y'all are doing.
Thanks much. We appreciate the call.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, great call. Great point.
Very good call. Joe, if I can here interject, I received an email, and this is consistent with what I wanted to talk about. I'll just encapsulate this, and that way get this out of the way, and we can spend the additional time for callers. But what I've been working on here is something that the Illuminati-controlled media, the mainstream captured corporate media, will never tell you. I received an email here from Melinda. Melinda, thank you so very much. She writes as follows: when Sandy Hook took place, I felt a terrible sense of despair come over me like a blanket that morning at the time of the shooting. The same thing happened this morning, and likewise I had no idea why I felt the way I did until I heard the news. Then it all clicked. The air was thick with evil this morning here in the Pacific Northwest. The boy, the shooter she is referencing, probably had no idea what went on. Satan was the one pulling the trigger. Melinda, you've got no idea how close to what what I'm working on here through my research and what you just said. I mean, it's right, spot on. She writes, when I entered the chat room tonight, someone was asking what race the boy shooter was. Does it matter? He was a 15-year-old member of an Indian tribe. He was upset because a girl thwarted his advances. He killed her, as well as some of his friends who he felt had betrayed him. He had a .40 caliber Beretta that was legally registered to his father, and she lives in that area, and of course felt the heaviness, felt the satanic, overwhelming despair based in the satanic, rooted in the satanic. And we see, of course, we know now that there was another school shooting. But let me just take you back, folks, very quickly, and I'm going to do a very, very quick version of this. We could do probably 3 programs full and just get to the part, I mean, have everything bring everyone to a level of understanding. I think it would probably take 2 or 3 programs to do that. So I'm going to just cheat a little bit here and give some high points. I had mentioned earlier in the week where my research had taken me down some rabbit trails, including Elvis, for example, Elvis Presley, and watching him in his last concert, and other things, and I could feel that there was a theme taking place, and of course, this relates to from the Bible, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, about the fighting principalities of darkness. Let me take you back very quickly to 1999. Folks, you remember what happened in 1999? Columbine happened. And you'll never hear, folks, anything about Columbine or this on the mainstream Illuminati-controlled media. You'll never hear anything about this. But there is, and we all know, we all talk about it, a war against Christians. Not just a war against Christians, but a war against Christianity. And perhaps the front line of the battlefield exist our children, the most precious commodity, or the most precious of the most precious to us are our children. April 20th, 1999, Columbine High School. Jefferson County, Colorado, Littleton, Colorado. You know this story, or you know what is the story being told by the mass media. 2 young men, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, walked into the school after, the planned attack involved a firebomb, but they walked into the school and shot 12 students and the teacher and wounded numerous others. That massacre really sparked the debate over gun control laws. Did it not? The availability of firearms within the United States. Everyone was outraged. Everyone was on the bandwagon saying, God, you must ban firearms. And of course, Sandy Hook followed that. And again, that sparked off its own controversies. But at the heart of this, and even we can extend this even to other areas, but let's just keep it very, very tight right now. More later. But very few people know the truth about what really happened at Columbine. The Marxist media largely ignored and continue to ignore the truth. Folks, this was an attack on Christianity, on Christians. Did you know this? Have you heard this? Maybe some of you have. Maybe some of you have. But Klebold and Harris were actually targeting Christian students. There was Cassie Bernal and Rachel Scott, who were shot to death after being challenged to profess their faith, but other Christians were targeted as well. The killings were scripted by rock and roll lyrics. The corporate media, the Illuminati media, hid the fact that the shooting was sparked by hatred of Christians, of Christian students. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were followers of, two primary musical groups. One, KMFDM, it's a German band that translates, I'm not going to give you the German, but it does translate into no pity for the masses. And Rammstein, a German industrial band. Now, just to give you an idea of how satanic these two bands are, for example, after the shooting, the band, one of the members of the band of KMFDM said, "Our records have stickers with warnings because they're no good for kids." KMFDM. Let's see here. Can't even read my own writing here. Let's see here. KMFDM forwards the ultimate sound and a message from Satan if you turn it around. I know it didn't make much sense when I read it either, but it's kind of a reference to the dualistic nature of Satanism. One of the lyrics, or one of the lyrics in one of the songs in this band, "If I had a shotgun, I'd blow myself to hell." The other band, Rammstein, this German industrial band, 2 members were arrested for actually simulating sodomy between, using an object and 2 men on stage. They claim their songs are all about love and all of its variations, yet their songs, some of the lyrics include, and I quote, "You in the schoolyard, I'm ready to kill. Red welts on white skin. I hurt you, and you cry out loud. Now you're afraid, and I'm ready." You know, it's kind of even tough to get through this. "My black blood soils your white dress. I'm getting more and more excited by your screams. Your screams hail into my sick brain. Now you're afraid and I'm ready. There is no God in my heaven." Another person, band, group, sicko that this duo, satanic duo, followed was Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson, we know, of course, the name is a combination of Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. Let me give you a really quick quote of what Marilyn Manson was quoted. Spin Magazine, August 1996, page 34. Here's what Marilyn Manson said. "Hopefully I'll be remembered as the person who brought an end to Christianity." The MTV Music Awards that followed, Manson got up and said, "My fellow Americans, we will no longer be oppressed by the fascism of Christianity." Yeah, on television. Now, Harrison Klebold became everything that Manson and the culture of death preached that they should become. Harris wrote, "I long to blow up and shoot everything I can. What I don't like, I waste. Feel no remorse, no sense of shame. I don't care if I live or die." Yeah, let's blame the guns, okay? I made a video before the shooting. Vile video. In the video they made before the shooting, Klebold and Harris spoke of their hatred for Christ and for Christians. I was going to isolate the sound clips, and I just couldn't do it. They pre-planned the killings, asking Christians if they believed in God, and then killing them for their faith In the video, by the way, Harris says, "Yeah, I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Shut the F up." Klebold and Harris plan to make fun of bracelets. What would Jesus do? You know these bracelets that young people wear. Young Christian students wear. And then they would blow them away. Klebold and Harris. What would Jesus do? What would I do? Bush. You see, they walked into the school and they found Rachel Scott. They went after her and found Rachel Scott. Just a gorgeous young girl. Just a tremendous young girl. In fact, Rachel Scott, she was the head of a Christian group. Her father is a minister, preacher. And she didn't hide her Christianity in school, which really made Harris and Klebold angry. They hunted her down. She was 17. She was the first person to die in that school. And there are several books about her. She was born on August 5th, 1981 in Denver. She, at the time of her death, and this is something, just keep in the back of your mind, at the time of her death, she was an aspiring writer and an actress with summer plans to help out, build homes in Africa and other places. She was a very devout Christian. She was described as a very devout Christian by her mother, and she was active at a youth group and a leader in a Bible study group called NACL, and of course that's the atomic or the abbreviation for SALT. I happen to think of Pass the Salt Ministries by Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer. Well, 1 month before her death, Rachel wrote a school essay stating, "I have this theory that if one person can go out of their way to show compassion, then it will start a chain reaction of the same." She actually wrote the day of her death. She was carrying a Bible and a journal, and I have to cut this short because we're up against some time issues, but in the journal, the journal actually had a bullet hole in it, but it also had some Christian professions in it. She wrote some Christian prose in the journal, and of course that infuriated this satanic duo. Folks, if you were of age or remember the Columbine massacre, you remember these idiots on television, saying, "Why did this happen? How could this have happened? What was the reason? What prompted Harris and Klebold to do what they did? Oh, it's the guns. Oh, it's the medication. Oh, sure, it's being medicated."
Yeah, the medication causing the hallucinations of the guns talking. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. When the first murder took place recorded in human history, it was a brother that killed a brother, and the guns were not even a creation at that point, nor were they invented for another, I don't know, few 6 millennia.
Right. The satanic duo here, where everyone, all of these highly paid mouthpieces of the Luciferian media, or at least the compromised Illuminati media, they all got on the air and said, we don't understand. We just don't get why Klebold and Harris acted the way they did. And of course, like we said, they blame guns and they blame medication, certainly medication. But what about the influence of rock and roll? What about the hatred of Christianity that's being taught by rock and roll, being taught by Marilyn Manson, being taught by these other bands? After they hunted down Rachel Scott and they found her, one of them shot her in the leg and then asked, do you believe in God? And she said yes. Well, they both retorted, and this is captured on video and audio and by other witnesses. They said, then go be with him now, and executed this beautiful 17-year-old girl. The video that Klebold and Harris did mention Rachel Scott by name, and I can't read the whole thing because you'd have to bleep me out. I'll just give you the gist here. Rachel, you stuck-up little blank. You blank little blank Christianity, godly little whores. You think Anton LaVey, who stated that today's satanic bands are the vehicle of choice for millions of young people, if they encourage a study of real Satanism, I'm all for them. Do you think that had anything to do with this? Music can inspire people to murder or violence, can inspire them to shoot a mall full of people. Anton LaVey. We've, the Church of Satan, had contact with a lot of people over the years. David Lee Roth recorded an album named Yankee Rose, which are the last words in the Satanic Bible. Yeah. Timothy Leary referred to the Beatles as the four evangelists and said that rock music was as much a deconditioner as psychedelic drugs. It's designed to blow your mind and suspend you suspend your conditioned reflexes. Listening to a Beatles album is an hour of deconditioning. And I was going to get into the song My Sweet Lord by George Harrison and how he goes from the word hallelujah to disarm people to quoting from the Buddhist book, holy book, but I'll save that for a later time. But folks, we are not being told the truth. You talk about pure Satanism. They've captured, or they're coming after our children in ways that you, the parent, don't have a clue. I know I didn't. But for the media pimps to get up there in front of a camera and to deny this knowledge, to keep this knowledge from the public, should speak volumes. LaVey is quoted as saying Satan has always had the best tunes, and of course LaVey had told Marilyn Manson, I want to make you a minister. It's interesting because we can extend it into excuse me, what's going on into go forward in 2003, the MTV Awards, August 28th, 2003, where you had Madonna, Britney Spears, and Christina Aguilera. Sponsored by Pepsi, no less, saying, you know what, we're bored with the concept of right and wrong. Think about that for a minute. We're bored with the concept of right and wrong. And of course, during that time, they were performing this soft porn act on stage at the MTV Awards. Yeah, Madonna, Britney Spears, and Christina Aguilera. We can go back further in time instead of going forward. We can go back further, and of course, David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, Nash. Let's blow out some sacred cows now. He, of course, fathered babies for Melissa Etheridge and her life partner. David Crosby happened to also say that his music was a subversive tool in his intent, or the rock music and the music of his time and his people was a subversive tool, and their intent was to swipe the children. And you can go on and on and on and on. And before we close this out, because we are going to do a program on this. Music, by the way, is mentioned over 800 times in the Bible. It's so important. Music is mentioned over 800 times in the Bible. The book of Psalms, in particular, one of the longest chapters of the Bible. And we're commanded to sing praises to God over 200 times, but like everything else, Satan has counterfeited and captured and insinuated himself into the music industry and into music, and these Satanists that run things are laughing at us, they're laughing at you, they're laughing at all of us as they take our children. I've got so much more, and it's so deep, and it's so pervasive. This goes into all tentacles into Hollywood, and yes, even into journalists. That's right. Television, magazine journalists, print journalists, who are part and parcel to this satanic agenda by their sins of omission or sins of commission. But I'll stop here because we have another shooting, and obviously, you can take it to the bank. They're going to be asking, "Oh, why?" Well, thank you, Melinda, for the surface explanation. But you can bet that no one is going to be talking about the programming, about the capturing, about the subversive plan to take away our children, and the war that is against Christianity. And oh yes, no one's going to be talking about the boredom with the concept between right and wrong, and no one certainly will talk about the sexual perversions, the promiscuity, and the homosexuality as shown in the 2003 MTV Awards that was broadcast on August 28, 2003. No one's going to be talking about the perversions practiced by Madonna, Spears, and Aguilera. No one's going to be talking about that. Why? Well, it's just not right. I mean, it's just it's inconvenient. It's uncomfortable.
They have too much material in talking about the offense and perversions they see as the Lord Jesus' word and his gift of salvation and the righteousness that is not of this world. That is the perversion that they are focused on. Their perversion is not perversion in their eyes. It is art. It is beauty. It is the best they're going to have it, because the beauty they think that they're encapsulating in their videos and the ideas that they express in their lyrics are something that will befall them in their eternal damnation if they choose to continue in their ways.
Exactly. Now, Joe, you know more about this than I do. I was listening to the lyrics. Just imagine your child listening to this, Eminem, or young teen listening to this. It was Eminem, right, that I've got this I captured here, isn't it? This soundbite. Eminem.
If that's the one that you were playing when I came in today,
yes.
then
yes.
yeah.
All right. This is a sequel
I had not heard
to a song. Okay.
I heard the original song. There's a song that he made called Kim. I believe it was released in a 1999 or 2000 album. The song is dedicated to and is a mock song of him murdering his wife with his child there.
Complete with the sound effects of him cutting with her throat, jamming her into the trunk, and being glad about it. Now, this is a follow-up to that song, Eminem. This is what is being passed off for music, or has been passed off for music, and it only gets worse from here. But I'm just going to play, I think, a 10-second sound clip. This is a follow-up to that song, and just listen to how the children are exploited here.
Ready now? Here we go. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Whee! There goes mama splashing in the water. No more fighting with dad. No more restraining order. No more stepdad. No more new lover. Blow a kisses bye-bye. Tell mama you love her. Eminem.
That's tame compared to, as you said, what has been released since by not only him but many others, most others in the entertainment pop culture industry. You know, when I was growing up, it was the local station here, Star 104, plays the top 40 pop songs of the top Billboard songs in the country, and that was the cool or popular thing. Well, listening to it today, it is like a devil's playground. I couldn't even choose a better word than that. The devil's playground. These songs that are on and these are the station that is played on school buses when kids ride to school, and kids turn on in their parents' cars, and they watch the videos. I mean, we have people, even a younger generation of people, some of who are and know Jesus, go to church, but still have their foot in the world with listening to music like this and looking up to these people. It is, and I can speak from experience because I've been there. I was a person that used to listen to rap music, and it wasn't so much that I liked the evilness of the lyrics. It was the whole idea of being popular, being hip, and among other things. But as you mature, especially and specifically mature in the Lord, not only does, if you like rap music, will that leave you, but any secular music and secular things continue to be pointed out to you, even to where I get to the point where you listen to oldies, and I can hear the references in oldies, songs I used to love and think they were, innocent and great. I can now hear the love songs, not to singing about an old love of a woman or a man, but they're singing about a different kind of love. And if you listen to the words of these love songs, whether from oldies or to new pop songs, they're not talking about humans and human love.
No. And that's you're exactly right. There's a lot of satanic worship, a lot of goddess worship, Isis worship in these songs. This goes back all the way into the 50s. Really, it goes back into, if you really want to get that detailed, it goes back into the 30s, right around the time, well, I shouldn't say right after, but right around the time of the Depression, even in some of the 20s. But this also has it's pervasive in our churches as well. And folks, look, we've I didn't do justice to what I wanted, to the depth I wanted to bring this, but just understand this: the fight that we're fighting, the good versus evil, is very heavily rooted, and Paul McGuire will tell you this, in the entertainment and Hollywood, in the entertainment industry in Hollywood. And as we had talked about yesterday, what And again, a tip to the spaceman up there at 540 in Toronto. On Saturday nights, A View from Space, talking about the switch between news and entertainment, which was once news is now entertainment, and entertainment is now where the messages are being transmitted. You have to really understand that dualistic approach and that mirror approach, if you will, the satanic aspect of that. Hopefully we can get into a more in-depth study of how, for example, this shooting in Washington State, in the music, in the Hollywood, in Hollywood, and then when Paul McGuire again spoke about the Tate murders, Sharon Tate murders, and Charles Manson, and the Haight-Ashbury district, and what went on there, and in Laurel Canyon and other places, how this all relates to where we are today and what we're seeing today. So all of this has got to be put into a specific context, because where we are today, we didn't get here overnight, and this is a carefully orchestrated and planned and executed, war by Satan and, of course, his earthly minions, as well as the spirits, the demons as well. And everyone from Elvis Presley to Jimi Hendrix and others will tell you that Meatloaf included, they get on stage and they become possessed. In other words, they say, look, it's not me playing, I am possessed. Folks, we didn't have a break. We'll just say this. Tonight's broadcast, of course, is brought to you by American Survival Wholesale. That's right, American Survival Wholesale. Our partners in this radio enterprise. Contact American Survival Wholesale. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com for all of your survival needs. Chance and Joan, great people. Owners of American Survival Wholesale, where you can find their grand opening sale from, it's a $1,900 package. It's a year's worth of food, $1,900. That includes shipping. Retails for over $3,000, yours for $1,900, as well as the other sale that they have, clean sip straws of $20 retail value, free with any order over $50. So if you've got, let's say, $150 worth of merchandise you'd like to order, split it up into three, and you get 3 free straws. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. And definitely tell them Doug and Joe sent you. So, having said all that, Joe, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Again, folks, that was just a touch of, given the fact of the school shooting today, and we're going to see more. We're going to see more. The satanic, the dark cloud over this country, to me, represents or is caused by the absence of the veil of protection by God, because we have failed to repent, and we, together listening to this, are in fact the remnant, a remnant, at least believers, walkers, fellowship in brotherhood and sisterhood in Christ. That's what I believe.
All right. We're going to skip the intro part, as we were very late for the break. But no, I want you to continue. If you... Okay. You want to take calls?
To continue, I think, would perhaps water down too much the information we have, and we don't have enough time.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But folks, and I don't know how many of you listeners out there know the real story behind Columbine. Let me just finish it by saying this. I don't know how many, if you've heard that Klebold and Harris were, in fact, their whole mission, influenced by satanic music, influenced by the Hollywood satanic component, and other, of course, the German bands, but they're satanic in nature. I mean, how many of you really realized that Klebold and Harris were gunning for Christians and not just students?
I remember listening to the stories of the survivors, and one of the stories stated that one of the gunmen went into the lunchroom and lined up the students in a line and went up to a girl and asked her if she believed in Jesus, and when she said yes, he shot her in the face.
But you know, all of that is treated as anecdotal, as like a footnote in everything else, and the blame is being pushed on other areas. And I think when we really understand the depth, the breadth of the war against Christianity, and how much Christians are hated,
and we're promised that we're going to be hated. Jesus said that he was here. He came to the earth, committing no offense or sin, yet they hated him, and he spoke only truth. And they hated him so much that they persecuted him, that they killed him. But it was done not in vain. It was done for all our sakes. And the Lord goes on to say, if you think that, if I came to this earth and I suffered, what do you think is going to happen to you? Yeah. Don't expect any less. And it's not it's not to punish you. It is to make you pure, because we are told that through trials, through tribulations, and through persecution, if we suffer for the Lord's sake, for His word, for His truth, we will be clothed with a cloth of white, radiant white, without spot, and entered in as a holy one in His kingdom of righteousness for everlasting. And many scriptures go on to talk about this, about suffering for the Lord's sake. For when you suffer for the sake of the word, be joyful, uplift each other, and understand that this is the consolidation and salvation. We're going to endure, for if you suffer, it goes on to say, and I, brethren, if I preach circumcision, why do I yet suffer persecution? Then this is the offense of the cross has ceased. But it goes on to say, for unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ, not only to believe on Him, but also to suffer for His sake, which is a manifest token of the righteous judgment of God, that ye may be counted worthy in the kingdom of God, for which ye also suffer.
Correct. I mean, obviously correct, but yes, that's what we're experiencing. But just from my perspective, from an earthly perspective, just take a step back to talk about, we were talking about Ebola, we're talking about ISIS threat, we're talking, about every crisis imaginable that we're facing right now, including the economic threat. All of this can be traced back to this orchestrated globalist plan, and we've got to understand each component of we don't have to understand, but it helps us to understand each component of the plan. It helps us to understand the bigger picture. So a lot of times the shows will give lip service, whether it be out of time constraints or lacking the depth or inability to get into the depth. A lot of times we just pay lip service is just paid to these issues, when in fact these issues, this mosaic of issues, or this mosaic of Satanist, this hatred of Christianity, is really what's behind everything that we're seeing. And of course the MK Ultra mind control, the Tavistock Institute, the Nazis, all of this.
Let's take a little closer look at this. We see today that Christianity, the belief Jesus Christ, is hated, not only by the Satanists, but by secularists, by atheists. There's an excellent quote that I don't know who said it, but they said, "Oh, so you're an atheist? What is it like to talk about God all the time?" we see that prayer has been vehemently attacked and opposed in all areas of public and private life. Now, if prayer was nothing and had no power, would they attack it?
Absolutely not.
If there was no power in the Lord of Jesus and His name and His salvation and the gift that He gave, would they care enough to attack it?
No, they wouldn't have to. They might mock it. But they wouldn't have to. You see, the more powerful that you are, the bigger the target you are, and they'll come after you the hardest. So if you've got the power of the blood behind you, and I'm talking about the blood of our Savior, then of course you're going to be a huge target. And that goes back to what Byron said, in the family. A lot of times when you've got people unequally yoked, there's trouble. And that's in business relationships. And all of this now is coming out in a very pronounced way. If you look at what's taking place, and even to the extent that we see things taking place in Ferguson, by the way, soon, within the month, probably within this month, I wouldn't be surprised sometime before the election, they are going to have the grand jury, they're going to release a grand jury's verdict against the police officer who shot Michael Brown in Ferguson. And I'm, based on the information I've seen leaked out, chances are the police officer will be exonerated, which will in turn spark riots that will make the Watts riots look like a picnic. Maybe. At least that's the plan. So all of this, you might, please understand, all of these situations are connected. The thread that connects them is this satanic agenda. And I'm not, that's all. I don't know what else to say without going into some very, very deep and further explanations, getting back into MK Ultra mind control and really breaking that down. The Tavistock Institute and their of course the American counterparts, which include but not limited to the CFR and the Trilateral Commission, the
Ford Foundation,
people,
Rand Corporation,
and who's a part of these
Reserve,
Federal Reserve, Yeah, exactly. So we got we have these black satanic people, Hillary Clinton, for example, who, without any doubt in my mind anyway, is a witch, practicing witch.
I was looking for any type of ammunition. Black was not a reference to any external or outward appearance of any kind. It was a reference to the spiritual nature of the people,
right,
who are fighting for control of basically being the captain of the sinking Titanic.
Yeah, and we are fighting the powers and principalities of darkness, as referenced in Ephesians 6. So
it says,
full circle.
In your Ephesians 6 referencing that is right on the money. And it also says that for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal,
and nor should they be at this level, because prayer and other means must be used. Of course, that does not mean abandoning your physical preparations. That means having your spiritual preps and understand. You see, you've got to understand. I believe you've got to understand Ephesians 6 in order to be spiritually prepared and make your spiritual preparations as well as your practical earthly preparations, combine the two, and but put your faith, of course, in those spiritual preparations. Now, I've really dominated a lot with this, but you can see, folks. I think you can see how, really, from early rock to Christian rock and roll of today, from the white hats, so-called white hats, or people you think were really okay people, to... Are you going to say something about white now?
No, I was going to say some people, depending on who I'm talking to, look at me with the most puzzling face when I tell them I can't stand Christian music.
Well, and that's interesting, because I just had this conversation with somebody. The Christian music of today is actually...
And I'm not talking about hymns
not worship music
in the Bible.
Right,
I'm not talking
right.
about... I'm talking about, these songs of, they're tailored to, and you get into the Christmas songs and the holiday songs, but the Christian music of today, I mean, do we have time to worship the Lord in a hymn, in an uplifting cheer in the church? Yes. But do we have time to put on or play a CD worth of music in a service? I mean, when a church service is an hour or an hour and a half long, and 20 minutes of that is a sermon from the pastor, the meat, supposedly, of the sermon or of the service, and in that 20 minutes of supposed meat, it is
head-banging rock and roll to attract the young people, and that's the excuse they use.
Right. We're not going to church to be entertained. We're going to church to get spiritual nourishment, and when that is taken away from the church and replaced with false entertainment, false worship, and I don't mean it in the sense that people who are playing the music, singing the music, don't mean it and aren't doing so in love for the Lord, but I feel that it is it's not a worthless cause, but we don't have time for it.
That's right.
If you're going to sing the Bible, take the book of the Bible, a chapter of that book, and change the words around in a way that doesn't change the message, but you can turn it into a song. If you want to sing or need to sing that much.
Well, music is important to God, as I mentioned 800 times in the Bible. Music is mentioned 200 passages referencing songs of worship to our Creator, and none involve the rock and roll style that we're talking about here, and certainly the smoke of Satan and the dark arts. I mean, look at art itself. Look at the art of the early years.
The arts, right. Literature, the school of the arts. What do you think they call the entertainment industry? The arts, arts and crafts. They're talking about the dark arts, the dark crafts, the magic with a K.
You're breaking up. Yeah, I don't know. You're doing. It's breaking up like it did before. Just want to let you know that.
But yeah, what is happening is the evil has been dressed up into something of beauty, and that is through knowledge, through alleged secret knowledge, which it is not secret. The Lord did not keep anything secret that we need to have in this life that we're in now. Everything was given to us in the Word and through His Holy Spirit. Revelation will continue to be given to us, and anything that we don't know or understand, when we get to heaven, I'm sure it will all be revealed. And if that's not good enough, we need to seek and think there are secret, levels of apprenticeship, like in masonry, where each step and each degree you learn a new layer of the story. That's not, the Lord is not in secret giving the word selectively. He does give the word in parables so that the wise or the wicked, I'm sorry, not the wise, so the wicked can't comprehend it. And that's as simple as the secret is.
That's right. It's dished out in digestible amounts just like the Book of Revelation or any of the current prophetic books, we will understand what is being discussed or what is being referenced at the appropriate time. And so, and you mentioned arts and stuff. I just want to go back and say this: I just laugh at these really educated, better than me or better than you people who will stand at the New York Metropolitan of Art Museum or whatever and look at a painting by Jackson Pollock or Andy Warhol. It looks like a bunch of pigeon poop on a canvas, or somebody vomited some Chinese dinner onto a canvas. They call it art, and they're all looking around and saying, "Ooh, oh wow, how great this art is." No, it's not. It's it's a perversion of beauty. It really is. And for those people who think that they understand this, and usually they're the Marxist liberal, truly idiots. Okay. Well, I should no. Maybe they're not idiots because they've got initials after their name. Usually PhD or something to that effect.
I'm glad I didn't say what was right on the tip of my tongue. This is why we see the illuminated ones, the Age of Enlightenment, brought about the American ideal and dream, and the republic that we once had, about the Illuminati. And the scripture states that their beauty will seduce many, and through that they will mix with other nations, and I forget the exact terminology, but they will commit whoredoms with the nations of the earth. And because of this, and because of their beauty and the appearance of their beauty, they are only that in appearance. Even Satan can manifest into an angel of light. Never forget that the devil will appear as an angel of the Lord on this earth. Will you be fooled? I know in my heart that I will know when the Lord comes back, and I will know when something appearing to be the Lord will come back. And you all who are Christians will know too, because it's not going to, as the Lord says, it's not going to be, oh, he's over here, oh, he's there. When the Lord comes back, the Lord will be back, and it will be in our face, in front of all. But the one thing that does trouble me, and we touched on this verse earlier this week, is in 2 Thessalonians, where it talks about it says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, that day shall not come," talking about the day of the son of perdition being revealed, "except the falling away, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he is as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things, and that ye know now, now what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, and he who now letteth will let, and he taketh out of the way. And then the wicked one be revealed, in whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and destroy with the brightness of his coming." And it goes on to say, "Satan with all his power and signs and lying wonders and the deceivableness of unrighteousness, and them that perish because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send a strong delusion, that they shall believe a lie. And all them that believe shall be damned, that believe not the truth, and had pleasure in unrighteousness."
Let me switch gears here just for a sec. I want to thank William R. Thank you for writing in. William R. writes, the children are the heart of America. ISIS, at least the Western-backed intelligence group ISIS, the creation of the globalist ISIS, they're going to go after the schools, and he writes, I pray every day this does not happen, but each day I wake up and wonder what will happen today, and don't you find yourself in that position as well? So will the media say it was the guns when these terrorists kill hundreds of children? It's probably going to be so bad that the media won't even show any of it. And yes, the music, the entertainment / music program will in fact be done, William, when we have more time. And he mentions Stairway to Heaven. Oh, don't forget, folks, the re-release of Stairway to Heaven, the 28th day of October, which is in 4 days from now. And I want to thank Maria for sending me an email concerning this, concerning Stairway, concerning the 28th day of October. It's actually an important date for the occult. By the way, as I mentioned before, the 2012 Olympics, there were global occultism, not just in terms of the participants, but because it was seen in homes all over the world, plus the athletes brought back something from that cauldron to their nation. And by the way, could that importation from the cauldron in 2012 have been a symbolic gesture of the Ebola virus, or even the Entero D68, although that is known as the Honduran virus, but that wouldn't be politically correct to say. Yeah. And once again, looking at the bigger picture, we talked about this. Nathan Leal talked about the 2014 Grammys. You're probably saying, "Oh, come on, man! Let's get off this already." But once again, it was seen in homes all over the world. It brought a satanic ritual into millions of homes, opening each one up to demonic influence, and of course, Maleficent in movie theaters. That was a global release, translated into many languages. By the way, November 4th, it's going to be released on DVD. The re-release of Stairway to Heaven on the 28th of October, 4 days from now. And people will, I'm sure, hear it again and again and again. Occultism, Satanism hits every part of the world all at the same time. As Russ Dizdar speaks of, Steve Quayle speaks of, Timothy Alberino speaks of, and others, portals to the demonic are being opened worldwide. Just understand that we have to understand the satanic nature behind this, behind Ebola, behind all of this. Folks, we've got to look at the much larger picture. I'm going to mention this too. The Feast of the Beast. We talk about the Illuminati, major changes in public policy. We talk about things like the Nephilim. Well, let's see, how much time do we have here? I don't think we have enough time to get into this. Joe, I'm not going to get into this. This does comport with what we're talking about. We could do a whole nother show on this, but we don't. Again, we just suffice it to say that there are a number of occult holy days, or holy days to the Satanists and the occult coming up, including the mother of, or at least the most overt of the satanic, of the occult, that being Halloween. And that begins, a few days before begins a week of sacrifices, if you will, and extending for a week, with Halloween being in the middle, roughly. I'm just giving you kind of a very thumbnail sketch of what's going on. And I just say this, that all of the events that we're seeing take place are corresponding with the satanic, and October 28th is the beginning of really the unholy week with Halloween in the middle of it. Human sacrifices will be it's going to be taking place all over the world. Halloween, of course, will be the worst day. By the way, and again, I want to thank Maria for this. October 20, Maleficent was released on March 14th, 2014 in America. As I said, it's coming out on November 4th on DVD. When one just looks at this at a glance, it doesn't seem to be a special day, but it's 6 days before the spring equinox, which involves human sacrifice, sexual perversion, orgies. It was released in other countries from Europe to Kuwait to Latin America and the Philippines on May 28th, 2014. Stairway to Heaven, of course, I mentioned October 28th, the first day of a very satanic week. So, bookended. Stairway to Heaven, October 28th. Maleficent DVD, November 4th, completing these high, unholy days filled with human sacrifice. So it does appear that they're using the mother of all satanic songs, Stairway to Heaven, to kick off this horrible week and to seal the deal, the release of that movie. And, of course, that's depicted by Angelina Jolie in a Baphomet headdress. Is this, writes Maria, a way of trying to create a sea of change in the spiritual atmosphere, of trying to enlarge demonic power and escalate demonic influence? That's a question for Russ Dizdar, and I'm sure he'll be talking about that at the conference on November 14th, 15th. We'll be there. Wow. I'm spent. You know what? I'm done.
I was completely wiped out about an hour before the show. I was ready to go at it. And when the show started, it was got me going again. And now I feel like I could do another 3 hours. And this is the way it goes every night, which is, it's such a blessing because the way I'm thinking that,
well, I'm an old man.
Throw a 3 hour sound clip up there, an old show, see if anybody recognizes. Wanting to, how can you call off when you it's your show, nobody to call and say I'm not coming to work today. But no, in all seriousness, we do and will go through these periods of exhaustion, even when physical exertion has not brought you to that point. Mental exhaustion. We need to get into the Word. We need to pray, and we need to converse with each other and uplift each other, and in that will bring a renewal of our mind and our soul, and will ruin the attacks of the and that's what they are. I mean, a lot of people will look at it as just being tired, and it might be in some cases, but when you have a duty, a task given to you by God to complete, does the factor of being tired enter into your mind when you need to complete it?
No.
It shouldn't.
No,
and if it does, it is an attack from the enemy, and we need to recognize it as such. And
you're exactly correct, and for all that we do, and I think we do a lot in preparation for the show, but it's nothing compared to the stress associated with people that we know, and even our listeners. You got 2 jobs and 4 jobs, maybe among a husband and wife, and you work all the time. You rarely see your family just to get by because we're losing every day. It seems like we're losing our purchasing power, and we just have to do more to.
On top of that, the theft of personal property or wages increases through taxes, through hyperinflation, inflation, then hyperinflation, and all the other schemes and usury that is our economic system. And the Bible speaks at this in great lengths in the Old and New Testament. A lot of times you'll see references to making the bald and naked. And many times when looking into the root words and in the context, it's speaking of making someone, showing for them for what they are. And in the case of our economy, would be to show that our currency is nothing. It is empty. I don't care what kind of dollar or what bill you have. Bring back the old $1,000 bills. You can have a suitcase full of them. They're not even worth the paper they're printed on. And what the Federal Reserve has done over this last 100 years is take the real wealth, which was and is gold and silver and assets of value,
property and other commodities, right? Yep.
Switched their paper and distributed the paper and used that to buy up real assets. And they've been buying up real assets with their created fake paper. And now that they have the control of all the assets, they're going to crash the fake paper. Having all the real assets, they've accomplished their goal. They have robbed
that happens. That's right.
the people in the open with the people's permission. And can we say, yes, they did rob us, I guess, because it has been so subtle, systematic, and I don't know. At the same time, it seemed to be a benefit. You know, when
it was good, it was good.
Right.
When it was bad, and it was, but it was never good. It was a false prosperity. We're up against the close of the show, folks. I just want you to. I didn't mean to cut you off here, but we're up against it. Folks, think about this. If you want to consider about the time in which we live, are we in the final days? Well, think about this. For a matter of perspective, every 2 minutes, we take as many photos as all humanity took during the entire 1800s. That's every 2 minutes. We take as many photographs as all of humanity took during the entire 1800s. The first photograph was ever taken was in 1826, and it's estimated that 880 billion photos will be taken this year. So, in actuality, 10% of all photographs ever taken were taken in the last 12 months. That's technology. That's a time clock. Now, interesting.
It's been a great week. Looking forward to next week. Don't forget, tomorrow night, the Weekend Vigilante with Pastor David Langford will be on, as well as, I think, Christopher Horner is the other guest, and that will be 8 p.m. here tomorrow night. We will see you then. Have a great weekend. God bless. Stay safe. Until next time.